Joe Scarborough from Morning Joe on MSNBC was making fun of people who were pushing Democratic senators, James Manchin and what's her name, Kristen Cinema. I believe I'm supposed to know these people's names, but sometime, what can I say, man? I'm doing this at 1 a.m. Kirsten Cinema. Yes, Kirsten Cinema. See, there we go. Morning Joe was making fun of people who are pushing Kirsten Cinema and James Manchin to represent their constituents. Now, a lot of people, there was a clip that went viral. I didn't cover it, but Kyle Kalinske did, a couple other people, where Joe Scarborough actually came out in favor of Medicare for all, albeit with a capitalist framework, but whatever, we'll take it. And basically was saying Medicare for all would save the government money, and he was supporting it. Now he's turning around, and he also in that same segment was agreeing with the guy he brought onto the show, saying that the Democratic establishment was a net negative, and basically the neoliberalism was holding back the Democratic Party and the country from getting anything done. He agreed with this previously. And now that there are people on Twitter who are saying to Manchin and Cinema, hey, you guys should get rid of the filibuster so we can actually get bills passed. He's like, oh, what are you, joking? The establishment is great the way it is. I mean, come on. I mean, just grow up. Basically, that's what he says. I'm going to play a little bit of the clip here for you, but it just goes to show you, never trust anybody on MSNBC because they'll pretend to be populist one day, and then the next day they'll go right back to their establishment ways. Like, imagine criticizing voters for trying to get senators to do what they want them to do, the people who elected them, right? But anyway, so let's look at this clip, and then I'm going to give you my take on it.
I'm looking on Twitter and I'm hearing some of these comments from people attacking Kristen Sinema. Well, she can just leave the party. And I'm sitting there thinking, what are you, a Republican in Georgia? Like, Kristen's, you have two Democratic senators in John McCain and Barry Goldwater's state. And you want them to leave? What? Do you think you're going to get Che Guevara elected out there? It's like, seriously. When are people going to grow up? And Joe Manchin, he's voting like he's a Democrat.
Last Democrat from West Virginia.
He made Democrats the majority party. He is in a state that Donald Trump won 68% to 29%. And these idiots on Twitter,
just like telling people to grow up because they want the senators to actually do something they want them to do. Like, Joe, I don't think Joe understands. These people represent us. They do not represent anybody else. Like, that's number one. They represent us. So the people should be demanding what they want from these people. Now, number two, he said, what does he say? He says, oh, conservative senators. You need conservative senators in these states because they're conservative states. So how else could a Democrat win if they weren't super conservative? That is a load of bullshit, okay? If you want to talk about conservative on issues like abortion, for instance, or gay marriage or guns rights, yes, I'll give you that. Democrats who are more conservative on those issues might do better in a state like West Virginia, for instance, where James Manchin is from. But if you're talking about Wall Street bailouts or tax cuts for the rich, people in West Virginia don't want that. James Manchin, you're talking about a guy who voted with the Trump administration 60% of the time. He voted for tax cuts for the wealthy. He voted for deregulation of Wall Street. Do you think the people of West Virginia want this? No, of course not. Because poor people want the rich to be taxed. Generally speaking, they want Wall Street to be regulated. And they also want, the creation of new jobs and stronger unions, because these people are workers. They work in like coal mines, a lot of them in West Virginia. Some people might work in factories. There are farmers. So yes, these people don't want tax breaks for the wealthy. These people don't want deregulation for Wall Street, but that's exactly what James Manchin voted for. So like the idea that you need to vote conservative on these type of issues, which is what he's implying, in order to win that state, that's ridiculous. Now, look, I could criticize, I don't know specifically how he voted on abortion, but let's say, for the sake of art, because I haven't looked at his record in a while, but let's say for the sake of argument, James Manchin and Christian, Cinema, they both voted against abortion, saying that there should be no abortion at all. Let's just say for the sake of argument. Look, I don't think any senator is really saying that except for maybe one or two. But for the sake of argument. Yes, is that a position you can criticize? Yes, absolutely it's a position you can criticize. However, you can also say, okay, well, maybe this is what their constituents want. They're representing their constituents. So there you would have a good argument, Joe, to say, oh, well, they need to be conservative to win the state. But when you talk about Wall Street bailouts and all the other things that they voted for, the Trump tax cuts were 86% of the benefits went to the top 1%. Poor people don't want this. So no, yes, a populist candidate could very well win in a state like West Virginia. Now, of course, maybe if you're like super pro LGBTQ or you're very upfront about your abortion rules and things like that, maybe you couldn't win, right? But if you focus on economic issues and you're populist, absolutely you could win. And this is actually one of my criticisms of Bernie Sanders' campaign in 2020 versus 2016. 2020, he stuck to the economic policies. 2016, he stuck to the economic policies. 2020 went more into the identity politics stuff. And look, I'm not saying that we shouldn't fight for gay rights. We shouldn't fight for trans rights. We shouldn't fight for Black Lives Matter, even though Black Lives Matter was a pretty popular one. Generally speaking, these things can be unpopular in swing states and conservative states. I'm not saying we shouldn't fight for them. When you get in office, you should still do the right thing. But don't make them the forefront of your policy. Make the economic things, the issues where you're universally popular, make those the forefront of your policy. Anyway, though, I digress. So yeah, Joe is making it look like these people are silly because they want Manchin to get the vote against the filibuster and to get rid of the filibuster. Now, me personally, how I feel about the filibuster is it should not exist. It should be gone. It's being used to, they say it's to balance the power. It's really being used to obstruct the majority group from getting any bills passed. And when's the last time there was a supermajority? In 2012. And before that, like the early 2000s. So normally, people do not have the 60 votes they need in the Senate to get bills passed and to avoid the filibuster. So, I think we should get rid of the filibuster altogether. I do not think these people on Twitter and Reddit and these other platforms are crazy for saying we should get rid of the filibuster. Now, a lot of people say, well, yeah, but what happens when the Democrats become the minority in the Senate? Then, should we get rid of the filibuster then? I would argue yes. And the reason why I would argue, I know a lot of people are going to be upset to say that we should just get rid of the filibuster, even if the Democrats were the minority. But yes, the filibuster needs to go. You know why? Because as a matter of principle in a democracy, a simple majority vote should be enough to pass things. You shouldn't be able to. That's how it was for years. You should not have a rule that says, hey, well, even though you have a majority, we can still obstruct the process. No. A simple majority should win, even if it's a bill that I don't agree with. Like, let's say, for the sake of argument, let's say the Republicans repeal Obamacare. Even though that's something I don't agree with and that it will have dramatic consequences, as a matter of principle, the majority, whoever gets 51 votes, should be able to pass their bill. No problem. And if I don't like the bill that's passed, or if I'm against the bill that's passed, then guess what? I will step out and I will say, okay, we're going to get the majority back now, and we're going to repeal this bill, and we'll go through the process that way. I'd rather do that than to continue to allow, votes to be obstructed, especially in times like now during the pandemic when we're trying to pass a relief bill, to be obstructed by the minority party just because the majority party doesn't have 60 votes or 61 votes. That doesn't make any sense, okay? The majority should rule. If we really live in a democracy, we really live in a constitutional republic, the majority should rule. So the filibuster has got to go, man. And all these people who are challenging Cinema and challenging Manchin, they're right. Filibuster needs to go. As a matter of principle, it needs to go. Not just because Democrats can't get their agenda through, but as a matter of principle, there should be no filibuster. Okay? And people like Morning Joe and stuff, they're basically moderate Republicans, just like Joe Biden, just like Obama, just like Bill Clinton. So they don't understand that when people who want reforms and want change demand the change, they're like, well, what are you talking about? Why are you rocking the establishment boat? They don't understand that neoliberalism is not popular. And this idea that, we're going to work with Republicans, we're not going to change the precedent of the Senate, that's not a popular idea with the American people. Okay, when you poll the American people, especially when you poll Democrats, they want the filibuster gone. They do not want the filibuster. So get rid of it. Get rid of it. And yes, they should absolutely pressure the senators to get rid of it. Because all it does is waste time, waste taxpayer money, and obstruct bills from being passed that would otherwise be passed with a simple majority. So, yeah, they're absolutely right. Joe Scarborough is wrong. Apparently, Morning Joe must have forgot to drink his coffee. Because he's obviously asleep and unaware of how the average American feels, specifically the average Democrat feels about the filibuster and wanting to get rid of it. So, yep. I kind of went off on a little tangent there, but hopefully you understand what's going on with the filibuster and with people wanting to get it removed and why Joe Scarborough is 100% wrong in what he's saying here, in my opinion. Now, I know some people are going to say, oh, we need to keep the filibuster because we'll be the minority one day. I understand that. I'm not going to criticize people for having that viewpoint because I totally understand you don't want the Republicans to just, repeal Obamacare or something, right? I get that. But to me, as a matter of principle, because I'm a principled person, as a matter of principle, filibuster should be gone completely. Doesn't matter who's in the minority, who's in the majority. There should be no filibuster. That's my opinion. But thanks for listening to this, guys. If you made it through to the end of this, be sure to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications, and you can follow us on Instagram at The Citizen Movement.